Get out, you're nothing but a disappointment. My father's voice thundered through the opulent living room, his face flushed with fury. 28 years old, and what do you have to show for it? Nothing. I stood motionless, hands steady despite the tempest building inside me. Behind him, my mother sat rigid on the imported Italian sofa, lips drawn into a thin line of disapproval, the same expression she'd worn for most of my life. I built this company from nothing, he continued, gesturing to the rows of awards and plaques lining the walls. And you? You ignored the path I laid out, chose to waste your time on idealistic nonsense, sustainable business models and so-called innovation. He spat the words like venom. To him, they were insults. Dad, if you just take a look at my proposal, I began, but he cut me off with a wave of his hand. Enough, Olivia, your brother closed 3 major contracts this month. You, on the other hand, are still preaching about ethics and long-term impact. This is the real world, not a college seminar. Marcus, the ever-loyal son, our father's protege, he never questioned anything, never cared whether their business harmed the environment or exploited workers, as long as the numbers looked good. The industry is changing, I said, voice firm, if Harrison Industries doesn't evolve. Out, he roared, loud enough to make my mother flinch. If you think you're so clever, go prove it, but don't come crawling back when you fail. I didn't cry, I didn't plead. I simply turned, walked upstairs, and began packing. I left the only home I'd ever known with my head held high. My mother didn't even rise from her seat. That was 3 years ago. I'd love to say I succeeded right away, that I proved them wrong overnight, but reality rarely works that way. The first 6 months were a test of endurance. I crammed into a tiny studio apartment, lived off instant noodles, and worked 18-hour days building my company from the ground up. Sterling Industries started with just me, my laptop, and an unwavering belief that business could be both profitable and principled. I invested what savings I had to hire 2 brilliant engineers, both overlooked by traditional firms for not fitting the mold. Together, we developed green tech capable of reducing industrial energy consumption by 60%. Our breakthrough came when a mid-sized manufacturer took a chance on us. Our solution slashed their energy costs and shrank their carbon footprint. Word traveled fast. By the end of year 1, Sterling Industries had grown to 30 employees and half a floor in a downtown office building. By year 2, we had offices in 3 cities and a growing list of high-profile clients. I kept my identity quiet. Sterling Industries was known for its visionary CEO, M.S. Evans. Few knew Olivia Evans was really Olivia Harrison, the daughter cast aside. From a distance, I kept tabs on my family's business. Harrison Industries was floundering under the pressure of new environmental laws. Their outdated practices were finally catching up to them. Then came the Maxwell opportunity. Maxwell Corp., the crown jewel of sustainable manufacturing. Winning their contract could make or break a company. Harrison Industries needed it to stay afloat. What they didn't know was that 6 months earlier, Sterling Industries had quietly acquired controlling interest in Maxwell Corp. Through a network of shell companies. Every major decision now passed through my office. So when my assistant placed Harrison Industries' proposal on my desk, I couldn't help but smile. The daughter they dismissed as a failure now held their future in her hands. I read through their proposal carefully. It was exactly what I'd expected, a glossy pitch filled with buzzwords about sustainability, masking the same outdated, harmful practices. They weren't trying to change, they were trying to buy credibility in a market they didn't understand. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Dad stressing about the Maxwell deal, says it's our last shot. Guess you were wrong about the industry changing, sis. We're about to land the biggest contract of the year. I set the phone down, calm and deliberate, and reached for the stamp on my desk, the same one that had approved contracts worth hundreds of millions, the same one that could end legacy empires with a single press. In bold red ink, I marked the proposal, rejected. But this wasn't just about revenge, it never was. This was about forcing them, my father, my brother, the board, to finally confront everything they had chosen to ignore. Tomorrow morning, I would walk into Harrison Industries not as the daughter they discarded, but as the CEO of the company they now desperately needed. Sometimes, karma doesn't knock, sometimes, it walks through the front door in heels and a tailored suit. The Harrison Industries lobby hadn't changed in 3 years, still the cold marble floors, still the oversized modern art, Still the same receptionists with overly rehearsed smiles. But everything had changed. I no longer entered as Olivia Harrison, the disappointing daughter. I was Olivia Evans, CEO of Sterling Industries. I have a 9 a.m. with the board, I said, meeting the receptionist's eyes. She straightened instantly. Of course, Ms. Evans, Mr. Harrison and the board are expecting you. The elevator ride was surreal, the same mirrored walls, the same soft hum, but this time, I wasn't holding a proposal no one would read. I wasn't hoping to be heard. I was here to deliver terms. My assistant, Sarah, stood beside me, tablet in hand. Their financials just came in, she said quietly. Worse than projected. The Maxwell rejection hit harder than we thought. I nodded. And the acquisition? Cleared. Legal's ready to proceed. The boardroom doors opened. I walked into a room full of familiar faces, older now, wearier. My father sat at the head of the table, looking smaller somehow. Time and failure had chipped away at the man who once roared. Marcus was beside him, trying to appear composed but failing to mask the anxiety in his eyes. Ms. Evans, my father greeted, rising and extending his hand. Thank you for coming on short notice. I shook it firmly. He didn't recognize me. 3 years, a different name, and success had turned me into someone even he couldn't see. No need for formalities, I said, taking a seat. We all know why I'm here. I paused, letting silence fill the room. Harrison Industries is on the verge of collapse. Your profits have dropped 60%. Your clients are fleeing to competitors with sustainable practices. After the Maxwell rejection, your stock hit an all-time low. Marcus leaned in. It's been a rough quarter, but 3 years, I said sharply. 3 years of warnings, of market shifts, of data, and you ignored all of it. You treated change like a threat instead of an opportunity, and now, you're drowning in your own arrogance. My father's jaw clenched, color rising in his cheeks. We've been in business for 30 years. Who do you think you are? I'm the CEO of the company offering to save yours, I replied, sliding thick folders down the table. Sterling Industries is prepared to acquire Harrison Industries. We'll overhaul your operations, retain key staff, and implement the sustainable systems you should have adopted years ago. The board members opened the folders, eyes scanning rapidly. This is a hostile takeover, Marcus snapped, flipping through the pages. I smiled. No, this is the only deal standing between you and bankruptcy. My father finally found his voice. You can't do this. I stood, stepping to the front of the room, calm, controlled, unshakable. Actually, I can, and I did. I looked around the room, at the faces that had once looked through me. I built what you claimed couldn't exist, a company that is both ethical and immensely profitable. You dismissed me, you threw me out, and now, I hold the future of your legacy in my hands. Silence settled over the room. For once, my father had nothing left to say. While you were chasing quick profits, I said, my voice even, I was developing technologies that are now industry standards. Something flickered in my father's eyes. Was it recognition, regret, or simply fear? Sterling Industries isn't just offering to buy you out, I continued. We're offering to save everything you built, the jobs of your employees, the legacy you're so desperate to preserve. All you have to do is sign. One of the board members cleared his throat. Mr. Harrison, we should seriously consider this. The terms are generous. My father looked at me then, really looked at me, for the first time since I entered the room. Olivia. Silence fell over the boardroom like a dropped curtain. Marcus's jaw nearly hit the table. Hello, Dad, I said, voice steady, surprised to see your so-called disappointment of a daughter. He stood abruptly, his chair clattering to the floor. This is a setup, a vendetta. No, I replied, calm and resolute. This is business, the kind I tried to talk to you about 3 years ago, the kind of future you refused to see. Marcus found his voice. You can't do this to us, we're your family. I laughed, short and cold. Family? You mean the one that threw me out, dismissed every idea I brought to the table, that family? I turned to the board. 3 years ago, I stood in this room and offered a plan. I warned you the industry was changing. I told you we needed to pivot to sustainable technology. Mr. Harrison called me naive and cut me off from both the company and his home. Now I'm offering to save what he refused to adapt. My father slowly sank back into his chair, his defiance cracked beneath the weight of truth. Why didn't you tell us? He asked softly. Why didn't you say you were Sterling? Would you have listened? I asked, quietly but firmly, or would you have tried to shut me down, like every other time? The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was heavy, real, a reckoning. Board members exchanged glances, contracts rustled, 30 years of pride and denial were crumbling right in front of them. The offer expires in 24 hours, I said, standing. I suggest you think very carefully, not just about this company, but about the hundreds of people whose livelihoods depend on it. I turned toward the door. Olivia, wait, my father said. I paused. His voice was rough, worn down not just by age but by the sudden realization of everything he had lost, and everything I had become. I was wrong, he said, about everything. I looked back at him. Yes, I said simply, you were. Then I asked, the real question is, are you ready to admit that to more than just me? He glanced around the boardroom, at the executives who had once echoed his certainty, at the consequences of refusing to change, at the daughter who now held the power to reshape it all. The world is changing, he said slowly. Maybe it's time we change, too. 2 weeks later, I sat behind the massive oak desk that had once belonged to my father, now mine, as I signed the final acquisition papers. Harrison Industries was now a subsidiary of Sterling. We kept most of the workforce, began restructuring operations, and shifted the company's mission toward innovation and sustainability. Several board members, including Marcus, chose to walk away. My father didn't. I want to stay on, he said in our first post-acquisition meeting. As a consultant, there's a lot I need to learn, about business, about change, about family. It wasn't a reconciliation, not yet, but it was something. The nameplate on the door still read Harrison Industries, but beneath it, etched in brushed silver, a Sterling company, a symbol of transformation, proof that legacy doesn't have to mean stagnation, and that growth can be the most powerful kind of victory. A week after the acquisition was announced, my mother called. I always knew you'd do something great, she said, her voice carefully measured, like she could rewrite the past with just the right tone. I let her talk, I let her spin her version of the truth. Then I said, Mom, if you want to be part of my life now, you need to accept that I'm not the daughter you wanted, I'm the daughter who proved you wrong. She didn't respond right away, and that silence told me everything. The view from my office overlooked a city in motion, transforming, adapting, evolving, just like the company I now ran, just like the relationships I might one day rebuild, on my terms. 3 years ago, they cast me out for being naive, idealistic, useless. Now, their survival depended on the very ideals they rejected. But this wasn't about revenge. The real victory wasn't in proving them wrong. It was in proving myself right. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't burning bridges. It's building something so extraordinary, they can't help but walk across them, just to stand in awe of what you've made. The intercom buzzed. Miss Evans, your father's here for the sustainability briefing. I smiled and picked up the proposal folder. Send him in. The door opened, and my father stepped inside, no longer the man who once shouted me out of his home, but someone humbler, quieter, someone still learning. Ready to learn about the future? I asked. He nodded. Ready to learn from my daughter. And that, more than any title, any acquisition, or any victory, felt like real success.